Welcome back. Today we're continuing on the theme of the very fascinating world of long exposure photography. And I'm here in the beautiful skyline of Melbourne. It's a summer's morning at around about 11:30 in the morning. And you might be wondering why I'm out here at 11:30 in the morning when the light is not exactly ideal. Far from it, especially it's a summer's day and there's a lot of certainly some haze lingering in the air. I had an appointment in the area, so I thought, well, why not make the most of it? Put the gear in the car before heading out, and just in case I had the chance of capturing something interesting. And I thought, well, why not challenge myself? So it's not exactly the perfect hour. I'd much rather be here much earlier in the day or much later in the day, better conditions for a great shot. But I thought this thing of challenging myself and see what I can come up with when the conditions aren't exactly perfect. So even when the conditions aren't ideal, it's still fun. It's still a chance to experiment and challenge yourself. My setup today is pretty simple. I've got the camera on a tripod. I've got a couple of ND filters, neutral density filters, to cut down the lights, which allows me to do the extended exposures from, I think it's around the 50th of a second is what the one without the ND filter, and I'm going to be using ND filters to bring it down. This is our baseline image, if you like. It's on a 50th of a second. Certainly no neutral density filter at all. You can see the detail in the water, and it reflects also the current lighting conditions. Put on a 10 stop ND filter. So this is taking it from the 50th to 15 seconds. 10 stops difference. And notice how we've now got some movement. There's some movement in the clouds, a little bit of movement there. There's water movement. It's good, it's noticeable. But I wanted even more, and I had with me I had a couple of other ones, but I included a 4-stop ND filter. Now, it is not ideal to stack your ND filters at all. It's not perfect. But if that's what you've got, that's fine. Don't miss a shot simply because of it. But the problem with stacking ND filters can be you get image deterioration, and it can be for a few different reasons, including you can get color casting. It can be tints of whether it's blue or magenta. These can start to appear into the shot because you're stacking your ND filters. You can start to get the corners starting to get sort of start to appear darker in the corners of the image because of the stacking of the ND filters. There's other reasons as well with reflections and flares and all sorts of things, but you just need to be aware that if you are stacking your neutral density filters, that these deteriorations can occur. It's not always by any means. Sometimes you get away with it with no problem whatsoever. So now let's push it even further, and going to get this exposure of 90 seconds, around 90 seconds. So what's that, a minute and a half? To achieve the minute and a half exposure, I'm going to add on the extra neutral density filter of another 4 stops. So I'm putting it on top of the 10, and I've already talked about the disadvantages of stacking. In the perfect world, I would have had a fixed 15 stop neutral density filter in the kit bag. I didn't, so I've got 10 and I've got a 4 added to it. And look at the difference. Look at the smoothed out water. Also notice how the image is flatter. Sometimes this flatter look is created in this situation. I think it's mainly with the haze that is in the air and the long exposure. Often it softens, it becomes less contrast because essentially the haze is blending into the long exposure. So what I want to do next is add to the image by adding an element into the foreground. I'm on a small jetty, if you like, on a small area for the boats, and it's got a ladder, and I'm going to incorporate that as a foreground, and it'll help anchor the photo, excuse the pun around boats, but it'll help anchor the photo and give the viewer a sense of depth, improve the image, make the image look a bit more interesting. It's all very personal taste. From my perspective, this adds an extra element to it, and it improves the composition, makes it a more interesting photograph. So now we're over 3 minutes. We're at 192 seconds. It has really flattened out the water completely. We've introduced an element into the foreground to add extra depth, extra interest into the image as well. And in my personal opinion, it really lifts the dynamics of the whole image. And I like it. I like it a lot. And considering this whole thing where the light is far from perfect by any means, that how by using the long exposure, by adding an element into the foreground, by altering the composition, we're creating an interesting, effective image under conditions that are far from ideal. They're very powerful tools. Long exposures, incredibly powerful to create some incredibly interesting images, as well as using some composition technique of including an element into the foreground to give the whole image a lift. The mind starts to run a lot more now with this photograph. It's a much more adventurous photograph. Our mind wonders, not only is it shape-based, the wonderful curves of the handles, etc., but it's also, you start to wonder what it is, what's going on, what could be going on. Shall I swim across? So here's a couple of variations on the theme where I've altered the composition. You can see on this one, I've framed it. This is uncropped, this is the full frame, but include the top of the ladder and the posts, rather than including a little glimpse of the actual structure of the jetty itself. This is not a full frame image by any means. I've cropped in, and it's another option as well. So here we are with 4 of the results. On the top left-hand side is the original 50th of a second view of the skyline. The one below it is where we've used the 15-second exposure. We've got the water movement, bit of cloud movement, adding a bit more elements to it. The top right-hand side is where we've gone the approximately 90 seconds and really flattened out the water and everything. The winner for me is where introduced something in the foreground, which is that just happens to be the nice curve-shaped handles of the ladder, which then adds a lot more to the whole photograph. For me, it's all personal taste, but you can see how long exposures open up a whole nother world of photography, whether it's depending on what it is that you're after. But see the difference between the top left and the bottom right there, where we've gone from a 50th to over 3 minutes, and wow, it creates a very different image, and it's very powerful. It simplifies a lot of things out. So instead of having the texture of the water, suddenly it's just this smooth, silky sheet, if you like. It's incredible. I have available a long exposure cheat sheet, if you like, and I'll leave a link for it in the description if you'd like to grab a copy of that for free yourself. Just a matter of putting in your name and email, and I'll leave a link in the description there for you. And that's it for today, and I hope that you can see how long exposures are a fun way to experiment with your photography. They can really transform the way you capture a particular scene. If you have found this helpful, don't forget to like, to subscribe, and comment, letting me know what would you like to see in another one of my YouTube videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.